Train, CJ!
It's gonna be a tech and gaming, I guess, related week today. That's the Electronic Entertainment Expo, for those who don't know. Although funny thing is, apparently I believe tomorrow too is supposed to be the same day when DJI announces whatever their teaser trailer thing was, and a lot of speculations are it's basically something like a RC car related. To me, that would be completely left field if that is true anyways. But there was one funny thing I was thinking about today. It relates to, I guess, that whole conversation with the new regulations here with the drone laws. Some people are saying, hey, it's fantastic, it's great in every way. And a lot of other people, they're saying this whole thing is stupid, so to speak, and it's just a cash grab. So it made me think of that topic in general. Do people think it's great, or do they think it's a cash grab in general with all the registrations and tests? I guess for the definition cash grab, I'll just use like a third-party description of it. Like this one, it says, a scheme by companies to make poorly made product just for the purpose of making money, referring to an expensive but poorly made product. Example, this excuse for a game is nothing more than a cash grab, as people would say. Because so far with the process, just from my personal experience, it just seems like everything is so disorganized in many ways. Questions unrelated to a recreational drone flyer, you having to pay all this money for like materials just to learn, where they suggest that you go to quote drone school just to learn like the basics. That makes you wonder, like, would you consider it a cash grab in that way? And kind of funny enough, for the test, I actually asked like the school that I trained from, because some of the questions are so ridiculous. You're wondering, where did this come from? Where is this in, say, the Canadian aviation regulations and all that, where you can read this? And for one question in particular, unfortunately I can't say specifically what it is, I asked them, where can you find this? So they apparently emailed Transport Canada and they gave me a response. And afterwards the response was, oh, it's in here. They linked me to this book here. It's called The Droner's Manual. Now I was looking at this first, like, is this an official Transport Canada information that's free, like for the public to basically learn about? But apparently here it's written by a Kevin Jenkins, it says here, and it basically costs money, like $29.95 for this book. So for this one obscure question, you can't find it anywhere for free on like the Transport Canada site, the manuals. You're telling me I have to buy like this book here to find that one weird question. And keep in mind, it actually took them like over a week to try to find an answer for this too. Imagine if this was like for a car exam where they don't give you like a guide or anything like that, and for this obscure question you can't find it in any of the materials on their official government site, and instead they redirect you to some third-party book like as an example. Would that be tolerable, like in any place else, in any field? So with all that, it kind of made me think of the other perspective from what I'm hearing anyways from most of the people who say, no, absolutely not, this is not a money grab, it's all about safety, and plus it's better in many ways. It made me kind of think of those points that people are bringing up, and I guess just talk a bit about it, because many of them, it just seems like it's people focusing on themselves commercially. One common example that I hear from people who say, again, everything makes perfect sense, hey, it's pretty cheap, like, you know, just keep paying like $10 every time to keep doing the test. One of the justifications is you have to keep in mind that this test isn't, for example, just monitoring a person who flies, let's just say something like a Mavic Pro. It's basically everything in general. To me, that would mean, okay, they did not do a very good, thorough job then in terms of classifying how people are flying things, where and when, because I guess just like a car, you wouldn't study everything. If I just want a basic class 5 license, for example, to drive every day recreationally to get to work and all that, you wouldn't have to kind of process everything as if you're running a taxi or you're driving like a huge truck. Everyone's kind of different in terms of what they learn in that case. Or again, just because a car drives past a railroad track doesn't mean all of a sudden you need to learn how a train operates. I mean, to me, that's a little silly to say, well, yeah, it's governing all this, so it all makes sense. To me, that's a little lazy. Basically, they didn't do their research in terms of, does this relate to the average basic operator, like with that test? Just a clear example for those who say, yeah, it's governing everything, so technically it makes sense to give these basic people those complicated, unrelated questions. Like a basic flyer can't fly in a restricted zone anyways, period. So why should they be questioned about things like the radio, reading maps on how to operate as if you're inside the restricted zone? How does that make sense at all? It doesn't, in my opinion. The other argument I've heard to say, hey, this is not a cash grab, it's like so much better than it was before, is mainly from the perspective of people who used to fly commercially under those SFOCs. Because before, for virtually everything, you had to go through this process, get permission for it, just to fly in a zone to do work, for example, whereas now it's a lot easier with the advanced process. So in that sense, they're saying, hey, it's better to just tolerate that test or whatever, keep paying the fees and register because it's so much cheaper. But to me, you're only thinking about, again, it's more from the commercial perspective. People that have some kind of commercial vested interest in this as opposed to the regular recreational flyer, which in my opinion, you shouldn't be ignoring. It kind of makes me think of financial topics many times where, let's just say, if you're used to dining out all the time, not cooking your own meals, going to shop to the supermarket and all that, you're used to paying, say, $2 to $3 for an apple at some, I don't know, fast food restaurant, a regular restaurant. And then all of a sudden, they say, okay, we're gonna release a new program where that apple now is going to cost, $1.50 through the government only. So now you can't get it from those restaurants, but you can get it from the government. Like there, for everyone who is already shopping around that ecosystem, so to speak, wouldn't have a big deal with it. But let's just say like this regulation now says, nope, everyone's gonna have to buy it from the source that we say now. Basically, that eliminates anyone growing like an apple in their backyard. Like just for the heck of it, they have an apple tree, they wouldn't be allowed to do that anymore, or just regular small stores. Like there, you can imagine for those people who basically just grow their own little garden of stuff, buying it from small stores, they don't pay those ridiculous, for example, like $2 for a piece of apple. You're basically forcing them, imagine that, to now pay those crazy rates. Now imagine if something like, say, there was a government regulation say, hey, we're doing it for your safety because we're worried the tomato that you grow in your own backyard, maybe you don't know how to do it as safe, so we're gonna make sure you can only get stuff like that if you buy it from sources that we deem as acceptable. Would you call that like a cash grab, for example, or would you say, no, that's truly about safety? I would imagine there, for example, at most, if they were really worried about safety, like people growing their stuff improperly that could be hazardous to their health, they will release like a free guide or something like that people can freely download. Or imagine there, if all of a sudden they say, nope, you're gonna have to take all this test and become just like a commercial business operation that serves food to the public, for example. And in order to do that, you're gonna have to buy like this book from this place. Unfortunately, because of this disorganization and everything like that, unfortunately, it's basically commercialized everything. You have people preying and taking advantage of people. The fact that this material isn't out there available for free, you have people making up, quote, courses and stuff like that to try to pass the test, charging money for that. I mean, to me, that's not right. In many cases too, it's just the luck of the draw right now. Basically, you hope that you don't get these ridiculous questions like this one, where they're expecting you to buy this book just to find one obscure question, for example, that you have on that test and exam. At this point, there isn't really a ground school at all that can actually prepare you 100% to be prepared for all of these weird questions that could come up to you. So is it entirely a cash grab? For me personally, that's a little hard to say, I guess. Definitely, because realistically, you don't have like 100% of the proof to say, yes, for sure, 100% and all that. For myself, for example, I would personally say it just feels like a lot of this stuff was put out there more for like, say, I guess image, for political reasons, just to make it look like, hey, we're doing something. And in the process, it's the people like the recreational flyers that basically suffer having to go through all this stuff. So it'd be kind of interesting to hear, I guess, what other people think, just in general, if they think it's a cash grab or anything like that. Because again, I just don't see how people could look at things like that basic exam process and say, yeah, it makes perfect sense to ask people that are not allowed to fly in a restricted zone, to ask them all these questions on how to operate in one in general, just as an example. I'm almost inclined to say they should have to refund everyone who took that basic exam with the way it is right now that has really, the majority of it, no relation just for a regular drone flyer, like in general, that flies it recreationally. And instead, I guess they're spending the money on things like those Google ads and stuff like I showed you guys before, huh? For this topic in general too, I think it's really fascinating when I see actual airplane pilots basically debating with each other, where you have people who say like here, hey, that's just ridiculous, it has no relation to this, it should be changed, whereas other airline pilots would say, yeah, it makes sense because you're flying with me in the sky, so I want to make sure you know what you're doing. Like, it's interesting seeing the two actual pilots debate, because I know a lot of people would be a little I guess, discriminating, saying, hey, you don't fly an airplane, so I know more than you, like I'm more superior. Whereas in this case, you have two people in the same realm debating the point. There has to be a clear distinction. I'm not going to tell people who just use the internet to watch videos and do email that they need to understand programming languages. Do you know how dumb that sounds if someone came up to them and said, yeah, I know that stuff, so now you're entering my territory. Tech and computers, you better understand that too. Just for people to use basic stuff like that. Or in this case, like the drones, people who are flying something maybe like 5 meters in the air in the field, you're telling me they need to know all that? Or a good example with a car, just because you have a car and a license and you drive, like say your friend or family member to the supermarket, that doesn't make you a taxi, okay? Even if they say, oh, I want to chip in for your gas, it doesn't make you a taxi or a business. There has to be a clear distinction. Otherwise, the only thing this whole thing sets up is for people to profit out of others based on these, in my opinion, ridiculous laws, the way they're written and managed at the moment. The only people that win are those businesses that are taking advantage of people. To me, I guess you could argue that does feel like a cash grab in that sense, where the only people winning are the ones taking advantage of people because of the way the laws are written and all that. It's more for them to self-promote their business, their products, etc. All right, see you guys later.